Retro Rewind. One-on-one.
If we were to take your last two CDs, I know the last one was sort of a cover CD, and it had some nice interpretations of classic songs, and then the one before that really had a lot of angst and pain and you know,
it's a very dark album.
Very dark. But if someone's listening to us right now, which I know they are, what would you say how this album differs from the last two?
Oh, wow, the cover record was just kind of a thing that I wanted to do and put out and see what would happen. You know, it was something that songs I loved, and so it doesn't really compare with albums that I've written.
Right.
But the Shock album was from a very dark time in my life. I was living up in Vegas away from my family, and you know, there was a lot of stuff going on, and I had to write about it, and relationship issues, and it was just a pretty dark time. So it's a very heavy record too. It's really, you know, heavy guitars. It's the loudest album I've ever heard. You can put any other album on beside it, and it's pretty much louder than just about everything. And it's just I wanted that. I wanted that at the time, and this album is very different in that it's. I think it's much more accessible, and I think it's much more positive. Although it talks about death and loving someone so much that you just want to strangle them, but there's a sense of humor about it, and there's a sense of celebration, and I think it's a much more my essence rather than Shock was a period I was going through. The Shock album, the very heavy stuff and the dark lyrics, and that was just a period I was going through, whereas this is more who I am regularly.
And that's a very good answer. I appreciate that. A lot of people have written into us wondering what the comparison is, because it is almost night and day, you know, between those two albums.
Yeah, well, people change, you know, and everyone goes through cycles, and that's what causes me to write, is when something big happens. And, you know, at this point with this record, there were some big things that were really amazing, but weren't necessarily crushing my spirit, you know, like I was feeling when I wrote the Shock album.
Yeah. Well, that kind of leads me to my next question. Do you think there's any pressure on the next CD to try to get out and do what Venus in Overdrive has done?
Oh, yeah. Well, Matt and I are looking forward to writing. I've already got ideas, and I know he has too. And we'll see what happens. You know, it's every time I finish a record, I think is that the last time I'll ever be able to write a song, and I think every writer kind of feels that. So we'll see.
You know, when you're on tour, you're starting to see some new fans, I'm sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's that? Do you notice that? Is that like, all right?
Yeah. It's actually really cool. We're seeing you know, younger people, younger kids and stuff, and guys. We're seeing a lot more guys now. It's kind of a little more acceptable. You know, I'm married. I got a family. They know there's nothing scary about it. You know, to like me, and a lot of guys actually grew up. I've heard from several of them actually. They grew up hearing me through their older sister's bedroom wall, and going, you know, and getting into it like that, and we're in somewhere the other day, and there was like 50% guys in the audience, and they were like screaming and yelling, and it was you know, a couple of guys came up before the show and were like handing me albums, were like shaking and real nervous, you know, like so it was really you know, because I write from a male perspective, so it's surprising to me that it's been resisted so much, because there's a lot of guy musicians and bands and that who like what I do, because they don't have to worry about, you know, when you're a musician you can like everything.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think it's kind of the guys that were worried about you know, liking a guy labeled a girl's, you know, artist kind of thing.
Right.
And then certainly, you know, the General Hospital thing didn't help as far as you know, my rock image, but you know, that's a moot point now, because at my age, who gives a crap?
Well, speaking of moot and rock, you won a Grammy for Jesse's Girl for rock performance male.
For using the word moot, yes. Most unusual word, Grammy for most unusual word used in a rock song. Well, close. Anyway, yeah, I did. I won it for rock vocal or pop vocal or something. Yeah.
It was rock. It was rock. Yeah, it was rock. Which I like to say, because anybody that, I mean, yeah, you did pop, short for popular music, I would assume, but
yeah, I'm not quite sure where the line crosses. I mean, I consider this album rock, but
Yeah.
you know, it's very poppy. But I mean, you know, I consider bands like Cheap Trick rock too.
Sure.
But they've got really poppy stuff, and the Cars were certainly, most people would call them pop, but it's all rock, you know. And the difference is when you start to get into the speed metal and the
Right.
thrash metal and all this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
where it starts to really, you can really actually call it something other than rock.
Or when Jethro Tull wins for heavy metal performance Grammy, that first one they put out.
Yeah.
Ooh,
What? What's that again?
That hasn't happened since. No, but I remember being 10 years old and hearing the word moot, and I'm like, you taught me something at 10. I'm like, man, moot. What is that?
They still misspell it in karaoke machines. They misspell it M-U-T-E, mute.
Instead of M-O-O-T.
M-O-O-T, right.
Retro Rewind.